So I was wondering, does anyone else spend 90% of their time seeing the world as one gigantic Harry Potter metaphor? I am convinced that all you need to know about life is in these books. And that is why I was interested in taking the current political situation in our country and looking at it through the literary lens of Harry Potter. My name is Blake. Perhaps you are interested in knowing why I am wearing a sock and a smock. Look at you, you're like, all right, I know this one. She's clearly a house elf. Alas, I am but a mere muggle. I waited for my letter from Hogwarts the summer after I turned 11. And when I never got it, I thought that obviously Hogwarts had made a mistake and that I would get it the summer that I turned 12. But finally, after 26 years, I have had to come to terms with the fact that I am dreadfully and decidedly non-magical. So yesterday I tried to throw myself into a wood chipper. But seriously, the sock actually protects the PICC line in my arm because I have chronic Lyme's disease. That's a story for another day though. And the smock, well, I just really like smocks. So, like I said, I can't help but seeing almost everything in life as a Harry Potter metaphor. So when I attended the protest outside of the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia this past July, naturally, I was still thinking of everything in terms of Harry Potter. Much to the chagrin of my younger brother, who most oftentimes can be seen channeling the energy of Percy Weasley. Wah wah. So here's a bit of background. 1 year ago, I was so disenchanted with the American political system that I didn't have the slightest intention of voting in any of the elections. Primary, presidential, it doesn't really matter because I expected that the entire political system was rigged. They're all on the same side, and it's not on the side that we're on. And then I started hearing a lot of noise about this guy, Bernie Sanders. And so I watched him in some of the debates. And the crazy thing was that I would turn around while I was watching the debates and say things, and then Bernie would come out and say the same exact thing, only like seconds later. And this happened multiple times. That was the first time that I was like,
all right, you have my attention, Rose.
There might be one honest politician still left in Washington. So the first thing that reminded me of Harry Potter at the DNC were the Bernie supporters. Here were people from all walks of life coming together, fiercely united and inspired by a single individual. So, naturally, that reminded me of the DA, which, as some of you know, is Dumbledore's army. I think very obviously Bernie would be Dumbledore. So let's look at the similarities between the two. Using the character archetypes of Carl Jung, what both Dumbledore and Bernie embody perfectly is the archetype of the wise old man, or mentor. Other examples of this include Gandalf, Merlin, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and even Shadow from Homeward Bound, if some of you know that movie. This archetype is represented by the tarot card of the Hermit. Character traits of the wise old man include kind, independent, strong-willed, humanitarian, brave, curious, sharp, witty, inquisitive, progressive, revolutionary, enthusiastic, philosophical, spirited, and endearing. They may be quirky or absent-minded, and usually have an excellent sense of humor. They can even be saucy and snarky at times. Oftentimes, the wise old man is a magical being. A lot of times he is a wizard. Bernie has always seemed a little bit wizardy to me, and that's funny because some of you may know that his astrological sign is that of Virgo, which I have always thought of as a particularly wizardy sign. Secondly, let's look at the people surrounding Dumbledore and Bernie. Bernie's campaign ran primarily off the support of the millennial generation, which is also known as the Harry Potter generation. Of course, Dumbledore is the headmaster of a school. So despite both Dumbledore and Bernie being very old, they are both surrounded by youth. In a sense, it even goes beyond this. Youth is drawn to them. So we must ask ourselves, did they find themselves surrounded by youth because they sought it? Or was youth drawn to them because they had retained a mind that never lost its inherent youthfulness, and that it remained freer than even many young minds do into old age? It was Dumbledore who said, "Youth cannot know how age thinks and feels, but old men are guilty if they forget what it was to be young." Both of them innately not only remember what it was like to be young, but I think both of them never stopped. And perhaps youth follows the wise old man, because youth understands that it is for them that the wise old man is fighting. Bernie and Dumbledore fight for the future of a world that is free of the injustice and wrongdoing and hate that has plagued the world during their lifetimes. They hope that this younger generation will inherit a better world. And perhaps this is why youth rallies around them with such a fervent ferocity that is rare. However, what both of them have, beyond all else, is something that youth lacks but needs in order to succeed: wisdom. And beyond all else, that is the true essence of this archetype and what it represents. Finally, we notice that most importantly, Bernie and Dumbledore draw supporters out of love. They are loved by many. They do not draw supporters out of fear, like Voldemort and the Death Eaters. They do not scare people into supporting them because they are the lesser evil. In both instances of Bernie and Dumbledore, the loyalty and support that follows them is so incredibly strong that even with them gone, their supporters are dedicated to continuing the fight in their name. Even after Bernie had lost to Hillary Clinton in the primary, his supporters carried on without him, more passionate than ever before. Even when Bernie had left us and was forced to back Hillary as the Democratic nominee. This is reminiscent of both times when Dumbledore was forced by the Ministry to leave Hogwarts. After the discovery of the DA and Dumbledore's exit in the 5th book, let's call it the dumb exit, the vast majority of the student body and Hogwarts staff remain intensely loyal to Dumbledore, even with Umbridge instituted as the new headmaster. In the Chamber of Secrets, in which Dumbledore is forced to step down as headmaster of Hogwarts by order of Lucius Malfoy and the Ministry of Magic, on the grounds that he failed to stop the attacks that have been taking place on the students. Even in the face of this sheer and appalling injustice, Dumbledore never loses his composure and quietly agrees to step aside. However, he says with great emphasis before his departure, "I will only truly have left the school when none here are loyal to me. You will always find that help will be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it." Indeed, it is Fawkes, an extension of Dumbledore and his magic, who come to Harry's rescue in the Chamber of Secrets and save him from Riddle and the Basilisk. All Harry does, which brings about Fawkes' presence, is voice his loyalty to Dumbledore to Riddle. The scene in the 2nd book in which the Ministry removes Dumbledore and Hagrid from Hogwarts is also a very telling one. This can be found on page 261 in the Chamber of Secrets. We see Fudge representing the classic figure of the politician. Even his name, Fudge, is indicative of his blundering nature. When Dumbledore informs him that Hagrid is not the one responsible for the attacks at Hogwarts and removing him won't do an ounce of good, Fudge responds, "Look at it from my point of view. I'm under a lot of pressure. Got to be seen doing something. If it turns out it wasn't Hagrid, he'll be back and no more said. But I've got to take him." This demonstrates how quick the establishment is to incriminate even the innocent in order to appear that they are in control. Fudge is the politician who is not necessarily evil, but is just going ahead and playing the political game or being used as a puppet. Example, George Bush, Obama. Lucius Malfoy represents the evil, corrupt politician. He utilizes the attacks at Hogwarts as an excuse to remove Dumbledore from office, and while Hagrid argues that removing Dumbledore from office will only increase the chances of attacks occurring at Hogwarts, Malfoy is extremely quick to pull out his little parchment of signatures that indicate that 12 governors have voted for Dumbledore's removal, to which Hagrid replies, "And how many did you have to threaten and blackmail before they agreed, Malfoy, eh?" I think we are all aware that there is most definitely a certain amount of threatening and blackmailing that goes on within our government. Just look at the long list of people who have died in mysterious accidents or suicides that stood in the way of the Clintons. For more information on that, you can try searching the Clinton Deadpool. But the real issue here is that the Ministry of Magic is using civilian casualties to promote their agenda. They seized the opportunity of the attacks on students as a reason to finally get rid of Dumbledore. Now, let's think. When can we recall an incident like this happening in the United States? Off the bat, I can think of 9/11, which resulted in the Patriot Act, an act which infringed upon the rights of millions of Americans in the name of national security, ISIS and terrorism, which are more platforms being used to take away the rights of the people and give more power to the government, and school and public shootings as well, which are obsessed over by the mainstream media and are cited as reasons to take away our Second Amendment rights. What would have been really fucked up is if the ministry had orchestrated the student killings as a way to justify removing Dumbledore. But thank God, it was only a possessed diary and a basilisk. Interestingly enough, the 5th Harry Potter book, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, was the first Harry Potter book that was released after 9/11. It is also the book with clearly the most anti-government sentiment, and it is also my favorite book next to The Chamber of Secrets. I think the reason the fifth Harry Potter book is my favorite is because it's a story about standing up to authority. It's a story about revolution and rebellion against corrupt authority. It's a story about standing up to the vile Dolores Umbridge and saying, hey, fuck you, you abysmal, disgusting, raging cunt. It's a story about getting really fucking angry and then using that energy to organize. It's a story about saying, hey, how dare you make me carve I must not tell lies into the back of my hand when you're the liar, you hypocritical bitch. One question you may be asking yourself is, who are Voldemort and the Death Eaters? Now, honestly, I have no idea who the fuck they are. But I do know that they are there, and they are controlling our government the same way that Voldemort was controlling the Ministry of Magic. Perhaps it's the Rothschilds, maybe it's the Illuminati, the Freemasons, goddamn aliens. Maybe it's just good old corporate interest. I don't know. All I do know is that whatever group is behind the scenes controlling everything, we can refer to them as the power elite that drive our oligarchy and plutocracy. Oligarchy, for those of you who don't know, is defined as a government run by a small group of people. A plutocracy is a government controlled by the rich. And I think we can all agree that these two things are what we're dealing with here. We can also agree that what we are dealing with is corporate greed and interest. So whether it is a particular group behind these evil, power-hungry corporations, we do know that they are killing our Earth, instituting a mass genocide of the natural world, and oppressing more than 99% of its people. The Death Eaters, they are the pharmaceutical companies, the insurance companies, the oil industry, the food industry, the banks, Wall Street, and the medical industry. The American government, first and foremost, is their medium of control in place of our Ministry of Magic.